Welcome to this lesson on a framework for implementing business strategy. In this video, we examine our tried and tested framework for strategy implementation, surely one of the most significant challenges for business leaders today. The success rate of strategy execution is incredibly low. The fail percentages found in scientific studies range from as low as 7% to as high as 90%, with an average of about 50%. This means that every second strategy initiative fails to be executed properly. Research consistently indicates the following list of 10 key problems in strategy execution. These are: no or insufficient communication, insufficient or inadequate resources, ambiguous or conflicting goals, no or unclear strategy, ambiguous responsibilities, lack of performance information, silo behavior and lack of collaboration, resistance to change, lack of middle management support, and finally, but most importantly, poor leadership. So, what can we do? There is no one perfect model or framework for implementing strategy. However, by following the steps outlined here, you will be able to create the climate and momentum to successfully implement your strategy. The steps include: Step 1. Communicate the strategy across the organization. Step 2. Align operations planning with corporate goals and objectives. Step 3. Link budgeting to planning. Step 4. Link performance measurement and incentives to planning. And Step 5. Regularly report and review strategy execution. Let's now look at these steps in detail. The first step is to communicate the strategy. The communication of vision and mission starts with senior leadership, but is also the responsibility of middle and junior management in an organization. In addition, managers at all levels should be involved in some way or other in developing strategy, although this is not always possible. Best practices at this step include: involve staff in strategy formation where possible. Inclusion increases buy-in and helps uncover operational insights. Top leadership must lead, but cascade responsibility. The CEO, executive team, and heads should frequently communicate the mission, strategic themes, and how they translate to the business. But middle and frontline leaders should be empowered to interpret and translate strategy into context-specific language. Use multiple communication vehicles: formal, presentations, memos, intranet, and informal, town halls, team dialogues, methods work best. Reinforce continuously. Strategy should appear regularly in reporting, in meetings, in dashboards, not just at launch. Where communication is neglected, strategy becomes a top-down edict, and resistance or confusion emerges. Once the strategy is communicated, divisional or business unit leaders and teams must collaboratively set objectives, KPIs, and BU scorecards, or performance plans, that support execution of the strategy. Best practices at this step include: conduct collaborative planning workshops early in the planning period, shortly after strategic themes are finalized. Use strategy mapping to visualize the causal chain, establish core drivers of performance, and provide a clear, visual narrative of the strategy, which is easier for employees to understand and relate to. Use a combination of strategic plan templates and scorecards to guide goal setting and articulation of objectives, KPIs, and targets. Translate BU-level objectives into team-level, ideally with team-level scorecards. And finally, incorporate the planning into the performance management process where possible, and individual-level aligned objectives. Let's take an example of how team objectives are linked to organizational strategy. Organizational vision: to be known as the leading ship repair services company in the Middle East region. Organizational objective: to grow our market shares in Middle East region by 20% in 2024. Sales department objectives: to increase sales to existing customers by 25% in 2024. And finally, the sales department KPI: percent of total sales to existing customers divided by percent growth in sales per existing customers. The next step is to budget for strategy implementation. All too often, strategic initiatives are underfunded or treated as add-ons rather than core priorities. That disconnect is fatal. When budgets are unaligned with strategic priorities, Staff may focus on short-term firefighting and neglect the strategic agenda. Harvard's Robert Kaplan argued that 90% of organizations struggle with executing strategy when resources aren't aligned. Here are some tips on integrating budgeting and strategy. The budget cycle must follow the strategy cycle. Rather than treating budgeting as an accounting ritual, position it as the resource allocation mechanism to deliver strategy. Strategic initiatives should receive ring-fenced funding. Avoid forcing them to compete with operational budgets. Additionally, managers should be accountable for budget performance relative to strategic objectives. Finally, include scenario planning and flexibility. Some initiatives may require adaptive funding as conditions evolve. Strategic projects need budgets which reflect their strategic importance. Project reports need to report on completion to schedule and budget, and ideally earned value. Project accountabilities can reside at BU or department levels, or be allocated to project sponsors and teams where corporate initiated and sponsored. Additionally, the organization's quarterly reporting process needs to incorporate strategic initiative reporting as an integral element. What gets measured, gets done is a long-standing adage, one that holds critical truth in strategic execution. You will want to capture performance data from legacy systems, which enables measurement of key result areas in your strategy, your objectives, and additionally, track the progress of your strategic initiatives, your action projects. Ideally, you will be able to capture data dynamically at each of the levels in this diagram. Ideally, you will develop team scorecards, like the one illustrated here. When you are satisfied you have meaningful and viable metrics in place to track strategy execution, you now have to make sure that the supporting elements of employee performance are aligned as well. Just as what gets measured, gets done, so does what gets rewarded. When you are establishing your rewards and recognition practices, make sure that what you are rewarding ties directly to the KPIs you set. For example, if you are measuring people on how well they deal with customer complaints, then rewarding them for lowering numbers of complaints confuses the message you're trying to send. Rewards do not need to be financial. Here are some ideas you may want to consider. Use your intranet and notice boards to report on team achievements. For example, create a wall of fame. Arrange for attendance at training and conferences for employees meeting targets. Reward with wellness programs, such as gym membership, spa treatments, yoga classes, etc. Gift cards. There is a huge variety of gift cards from your team's favorite retailers that you can provide. Arrange sports, such as golf days, sports events tickets, etc. And finally, concert and movie tickets. For strategy execution to be successful, a formal process of review and reporting needs to be introduced and formally embedded in the organization's reporting and review processes. Ideally, the reviews should be quarterly, but also supported by more dynamic reporting and review processes using best practice technologies. It is also important to institute a consistent schedule of strategic reviews. These can include quarterly strategy reviews at senior leadership level, monthly or bi-monthly operational reviews at BU and team levels, and ongoing dashboards or digital scorecards enabling real-time visibility. A strategic review also typically reviews two categories of reporting. The first is an implementation activity review, which reports on progress on strategic initiatives, which have been completed, what is delayed, and what are the resource issues. The second, performance outcome review, will examine KPI trends, variance analysis, and emerging risks, and data will be made accessible and customized to business units and departments across the organization. In these reviews, senior leaders must review the scorecards and the strategic project progress reports. They must also identify obstacles, adjust course, and remove impediments. Over time, this adaptive feedback loop helps the organization refine its execution capability. In this lesson, we have briefly mapped out a series of steps a manager can take to implement corporate strategy. This involves 5 steps. Communicate the strategy. Align business unit and team goals. Link strategic planning to budgets. Link performance measurement and rewards to strategy. And finally, regularly report and review strategy execution. You can modify and adapt this framework as required, But it is important that you aim to cover all these bases at some point or other if you are to enable implementation of your strategy.
Want to learn more about this subject? Then click on our website to view the full course. Why not subscribe and get access to free articles and special offers? Join the Global Career Highway now.